My name is Lily Hart. I'm 29 years old. Until 3 weeks ago, I thought my life was settled in the quiet, unremarkable way people mistake for happiness. I had a solid job in financial analysis, a modern apartment downtown with floor-to-ceiling windows and furniture I'd slowly upgraded one bonus at a time, and a boyfriend I'd been with for 4 years, a man I fully expected to marry. His name is Daniel Chen. We met the way most adult relationships start now, through mutual friends, at a rooftop bar, where the drinks were overpriced and everyone pretended the city lights made them feel hopeful instead of tired. Daniel was charming without trying too hard, funny in a way that felt effortless. He remembered details, asked follow-up questions, made me feel chosen. For the first 2 years, things were easy. Dangerous word, easy. We talked about kids, about where we'd live once we were real adults, about dogs we weren't ready for yet. He proposed last December during a winter trip to the mountains. I cried. He cried. His mother cried when we FaceTimed her. Everything looked right. And that's the problem with things that look right. They can hide what's already rotting underneath. About 6 months ago, Daniel started mentioning his ex-girlfriend more often. Her name was Marin. They dated for 2 years in college, broke up when she moved cities for grad school. A clean ending, or so I'd been told. Ancient history. I'd never felt threatened by her name before, until it stopped sounding like the past and started creeping into the present. At first it was harmless. Marin would have loved this place, he said once at dinner. Then it was Instagram likes, comments, a congratulatory message about our engagement. I ran into her at a conference, Daniel said casually one night. We grabbed coffee, just to catch up. I wasn't the jealous type. I believed in trust. I believed in maturity. But trust starts to erode when the same name keeps showing up in conversations that no longer include you. Coffee turned into lunch. Lunch turned into drinks with friends who somehow always included Marin. And slowly, I started feeling like I was watching my own relationship from the outside. Present, but no longer central. Then, exactly 1 week before Daniel's 30th birthday, he said it. I invited Marin to my birthday party, he said, pouring himself a glass of wine like he was announcing a catering choice. Please be mature about it. I smiled. I actually smiled. Sure, I said, no problem. Relief flooded his face. He kissed my cheek, thanked me for being understanding. What he didn't know was that earlier that afternoon, I'd already done my research, and I'd already sent a message that would change everything. If you've ever watched someone you love walk toward a mistake and realize they're not going to stop, no matter how many warnings your silence is screaming, you'll understand why I didn't argue with Daniel that night. Arguing would have made me the villain. It would have given him a neat story to repeat later. Lily's insecure, Lily's controlling, Lily's dramatic. So instead I smiled. I played the role he wanted me to play. Then I went back to my laptop and did what I do for a living. I followed the details until they led me somewhere Daniel couldn't talk his way out of. In finance, people assume the job is just numbers. It's not. It's patterns. It's verification. It's reading between the lines of what someone chooses to disclose. 2 weeks earlier, after the third time Daniel mentioned Marin like she was a shared joke I wasn't in on, I'd looked her up. Her LinkedIn, her Instagram, her tagged photos. And in less than 10 minutes, I found what Daniel had never mentioned. Marin wasn't single. Marin had a boyfriend. His name was Evan Brooks. 8 months together, according to her very public feed. Beach trips, wine bars, anniversary captions that made my teeth ache with how loudly happy they were pretending to be. So that Monday afternoon, before Daniel even came home and dropped the bomb, I sent Evan a message. Nothing aggressive, just polite enough to be dangerous. Hi, Evan. We haven't met, but I'm Lily Hart, Daniel Chen's fiancé. Daniel's having his birthday party this Saturday at the Madison Loft, 7 p.m. He mentioned inviting Marin, and I thought it would be nice if you came too. The more the merrier. Hope to see you there. Evan responded within an hour. Oh, wow. Marin didn't mention a party. Thanks for the invite. I'd love to come. Should I bring anything? I told him just himself. Because the truth was already enough. The next few days were normal on the surface, the way a cracked wall can look stable until someone leans on it. Daniel was excited, texting me about the guest list, the caterer, the playlist. He'd rented an industrial loft with exposed brick and string lights, one of those spaces people choose when they want the night to look expensive in photos. About 40 people were invited. His coworkers, old friends, a couple of my friends who'd blended into his circle over the years, his parents, his younger sister Alyssa, and Marin. Friday night, Daniel was in full birthday mode. Haircut, nails trimmed, outfit planned, like he was the one getting married. He kept pacing through our apartment, checking things off on his phone. At one point, I asked, as casually as I could manage, "Did Marin RSVP?" "Yeah," he said, barely looking up. "She'll be there." A small pause. "Is she bringing anyone?" Daniel stopped. Not dramatically, just enough. "No," he said too quickly. "Why?" I shrugged, like I hadn't already invited the person who would answer that question for both of us. "Just wondering if she had a +1. "She's not seeing anyone," he said, with the confidence of a man repeating a lie he didn't even bother to fact-check. "She's been focused on school and work." I nodded, and something inside me went very still. Because that wasn't a mistake, it was a choice. Saturday arrived with the kind of crisp, bright weather that feels unfair when your life is quietly burning. We got to the venue at 6 to set up. Daniel looked happy. Not nervous, not conflicted. Happy. He moved through the space like someone hosting a celebration he believed he deserved. He adjusted the string lights, tested the music, joked with the staff. I watched him, and a thought came so sharp it almost made me laugh. If he can be this relaxed about inviting his ex, imagine what else he's been relaxed about. Guests started arriving around 7:15. His parents came first. His mother hugged me a little too tightly, like she could sense something in my bones. His father shook Daniel's hand and said, "30's a big one," like it meant maturity was guaranteed. Alyssa arrived with 2 friends. She looked at me and smiled, but her eyes stayed on my face half a second too long. Then came coworkers, then college friends, then my friend Jordan, the only person I'd texted earlier. Tonight might get interesting. Jordan showed up at 7:30, took one look at my expression, and mouthed, "You okay?" I nodded. I wasn't okay. I was prepared. At 7:40, Marin walked in. And even though I'd only seen her through screens, I recognized her instantly, like certain people carry their own spotlight into a room. She was tall, effortlessly put together, hair glossy, dress tailored in that way that screams, "I'm not trying," when everyone knows she is. She held a small gift bag in one hand and a bouquet of flowers in the other. Daniel's face lit up. Not politely, not socially, lit up. "Marin," he said, stepping toward her like his body moved before his brain could stop it. She smiled. "Happy birthday, Danny." Danny! I'd never called him that. She hugged him, longer than a friendly hug should be. Long enough that I saw his fingers press slightly into her back before he remembered I was standing there. He took the flowers like they mattered more than the ring on my finger. "You look amazing," he said, voice softer than I'd heard it in weeks. Marin's eyes finally flicked to me, and her smile shifted into something careful. "Oh," she said lightly, "you must be Lily." Daniel turned, as if he'd forgotten I existed. "Yeah, Lily, this is Marin. Marin, Lily." Like an afterthought, I extended my hand. "Nice to meet you." Her handshake was firm, confident. "Daniel's told me a lot about you." I smiled. "He's mentioned you too." Something flickered behind her eyes, fast as a camera shutter. Then Daniel was already pulling her toward the bar, introducing her to people, laughing too loudly at her jokes. I watched the way she touched his arm when she spoke, the way he leaned in, the way he kept his body angled toward her like the rest of the room was just background noise. And I felt something that surprised me. Not rage, not tears, just clarity. Because this wasn't nostalgia. This was rehearsal. At 8:10, the loft doors opened again, and the air changed. He walked in with the kind of confidence that comes from not knowing you're about to step into someone else's war. Evan Brooks. Dark hair, broad shoulders, crisp jacket, handsome in a clean, unflashy way. He paused just inside the entrance, scanning the room like he was looking for someone familiar. I intercepted him before anyone else could. "Evan," I said, smiling like a hostess. His face brightened with relief. "Lily?" "Yes." I leaned in for a quick, polite hug, enough warmth to make him feel welcomed, not enough to suggest intimacy. "I'm really glad you came." "Thanks for inviting me," he said genuinely. "This place is incredible." "It photographs well," I replied, and felt Jordan's eyes on me from across the room, watching like they'd just realized I was holding a match. Evan shifted the gift bag in his hand. "So, where's Marin?" I tilted my head toward the bar. "She's right over there." Evan's smile widened. "Perfect. I'm going to surprise her." I stepped aside and watched him walk into the crowd like a man strolling into sunshine. He wove between groups, smiling politely at strangers, moving with purpose. Then he reached the bar. Marin was standing close to Daniel, laughing at something he said, her fingers resting on his forearm like she belonged there. Evan came up behind her, wrapped his arms around her waist, and kissed her cheek. "Babe," he said brightly, loud enough that the small circle around them heard. "Why didn't you tell me you had a party tonight? I almost made other plans." The look on Marin's face was instantaneous, like someone had yanked the power cord out of her expression. Her smile froze. Daniel's head snapped up like he'd been slapped. And for one perfect second, time stopped. Marin recovered first, because people like her always do. "Evan!" she laughed, too high, too fast. "You made it." Daniel stared. Evan didn't notice the tension yet. He was too busy being happy. He turned slightly, eyes scanning faces, and then saw Daniel. The confusion hit him like a delayed wave. Evan's gaze flicked back to Marin. "Who's this?" Marin's fingers tightened on her drink. Daniel's mouth opened, closed, opened again. And then Evan looked at me, finally spotting the only familiar face in the room. "Oh, Lily," he said, relieved. "Thanks again. This was so sweet." Marin's eyes found mine across the bar. And in that moment, I watched the realization land in her like cold water. This wasn't an accident. Evan smiled at her, oblivious. "Seriously, babe, you never tell me anything. 8 months with you, and I still don't know your schedule." 8 months. The number hung in the air like a verdict. Someone near them went quiet. Then another. Conversations around the bar lowered, then stopped, like the entire room had leaned closer without moving. Marin swallowed. "Evan, this is Daniel." Evan blinked. "Okay." Daniel forced a laugh that sounded like it hurt. We used to date in college." Evan's smile faltered. His gaze sharpened. "You didn't mention you were coming to your ex's birthday party," Evan said slowly, not accusing, yet. Marin's cheeks flushed. It was last minute. Daniel nodded too fast. "Yeah, just a group thing." Evan looked between them, and suddenly he wasn't smiling anymore. "Right," he said, voice tight. "A group thing." Marin's eyes were glossy now. Anger, panic, humiliation, all fighting for control. "Daniel," she said through clenched teeth, "can I talk to you privately?" She didn't wait for an answer. She walked toward this back hallway near the bathrooms, heels clicking like a countdown. Daniel followed, throwing Evan a look that was half apology, half "please don't make a scene." Evan stood there, stunned, holding his gift bag like it had turned into something stupid. He looked at me. "Did I do something wrong?" he asked quietly. I met his eyes, and I said the only honest thing left. "No," I told him. "You did everything right." I didn't chase them immediately. I gave it 3 minutes, long enough for whatever was happening in that hallway to become real. Jordan drifted closer to Evan, offering him a drink he didn't take. People were watching the hallway now, pretending not to. Daniel's mother was starting to notice something was off. His sister Alyssa had her arms crossed, eyes narrowed, like she was watching a movie she'd already predicted the ending of. Then I walked toward the hallway. Not storming, not shaking, just steady. I wasn't trying to eavesdrop, but the acoustics in that hallway didn't care about my intentions. Their voices carried perfectly. "I didn't think it mattered," Daniel was saying. Marin's voice cracked, furious. "You didn't think it mattered that you have a girlfriend?" A pause. Daniel exhaled like he was annoyed he had to explain himself. "We were just catching up." "Catching up?" Marin hissed. "You've been texting me for 2 months, Daniel. Coffee, lunch, drinks." "It was friendly. You told me you missed me." My stomach dropped. Because that part, Daniel never brought home. Marin continued, voice shaking now, quieter. "You said breaking up was the biggest mistake you ever made." Silence. Then Daniel said softer, "I was being nostalgic. It didn't mean anything." "Then why didn't you tell me about Lily?" Marin snapped back. "Why didn't you tell me you were engaged? Why didn't you tell Evan about this party?" Daniel's voice hardened. "Because you knew," Marin whispered. Her voice broke on the words. "You knew if I thought you were available, You'd what?" Daniel cut in. "You're with Evan. I'm engaged. What exactly did you think would happen here?" More silence. Then Marin said, barely audible, "I don't know. I just missed what we had." I stood there for 1 heartbeat longer than I should have. Not because I needed more. Then I turned and walked back into the party. Evan was still by the bar, face tight, like he was trying to hold himself together in public. Daniel's mother hovered nearby, confused. Guests whispered into their drinks. The loft, moments ago full of laughter, now felt like a room waiting for an explosion. Marin emerged first, mascara slightly smudged. She didn't look at anyone. She beelined for the bar, poured herself champagne like it was medicine, and swallowed it too fast. Daniel came out seconds later, jaw clenched. He walked straight to Evan, grabbed his arm, and said something under his breath. Evan pulled his arm away. "What is going on?" Evan demanded quietly, but with a sharpness that drew attention. Daniel leaned in. "We should leave." Marin snapped, "No, don't you dare leave like I'm the problem." And then her eyes found me again. like she suddenly remembered the one person who had orchestrated the timing. I approached the bar. I stood beside her like a stranger. "Having fun?" I asked softly. Marin's head whipped toward me. Her eyes were wet, her face flushed, and her voice came out like a blade. "You did this," she said. "You invited him?" I didn't deny it. I didn't apologize. I just held her gaze. "I invited Evan because he's your boyfriend," I said calmly. "I thought he should be included. The more the merrier, right?" Her lips trembled. "You wanted to humiliate me." I leaned closer, just enough that only she could hear. "No," I said. "I wanted the truth in the room." She swallowed hard. Behind us, Evan's voice rose slightly, controlled but strained. "Marin, why didn't you tell me?" Marin flinched. Daniel's mother was now fully staring, alarm creeping into her face. Jordan watched me like they couldn't decide if I was cruel or brilliant. Marin's voice dropped to a whisper again, furious and desperate. "You're petty." I smiled, and it wasn't the smile I gave Daniel on Monday. This one had teeth. "I'm tired," I said quietly. "Tired of being asked to be mature about things that are disrespectful." Marin's eyes narrowed. I turned slightly, letting her see my hand, my ring. "I wasn't competing with you," I added. "I was trusting him." Marin's throat bobbed as she swallowed. Then, like she couldn't stop herself, she hissed, "I didn't even know he was engaged." And that sentence, so small, so poisonous, landed like a bomb. Because it meant one thing. Daniel hadn't just been letting Marin back into his life. He'd been keeping me out of it. The room was still. And in that stillness, I finally understood something simple and devastating. This wasn't about Marin. This was about Daniel. And Daniel was standing right there, between his mother, his girlfriend, his ex, and the wreckage he'd been pretending wasn't his. He looked at me, and for the first time all week, he didn't look confident. He looked like a man realizing his story had run out of lies. The party never recovered. You could feel it in the way conversations tried and failed to restart, in the way laughter sounded forced, too loud, like people were trying to prove something was still normal when it clearly wasn't. By 9 o'clock, at least half the guests had left. Daniel's co-workers were the first to disappear, followed by friends who suddenly remembered early mornings or babysitters waiting at home. The loft that had felt vibrant an hour earlier now felt cavernous, every echo magnifying what had gone wrong. Daniel's mother approached me twice, asking softly, "Is everything okay?" In that tone people use when they already know the answer but are hoping you'll lie to spare them. Daniel's father stopped speaking to me altogether. He watched Daniel like he was trying to reconcile the son he thought he knew with the man standing in front of him, hands shoved into his pockets, jaw locked. Alyssa didn't say anything at all. She just watched, closely, like she was filing everything away. Evan and Marin left together around 8:45, not touching, not speaking, walking side by side like strangers bound by an obligation neither of them wanted anymore. Daniel didn't follow them. He stayed, and that told me more than anything else. At 10:30, I called an Uber. Daniel didn't ask where I was going. He didn't stop me. That night, I slept alone. And so did he. Daniel didn't come home Saturday night, or Sunday. I texted him Sunday morning. "We need to talk." No response. By Sunday evening, my phone rang. It was Alyssa. She didn't say hello. "What the hell did you do?" she demanded. I closed my laptop and leaned back in my chair. I invited Marin's boyfriend to the party. There was silence on the other end, long enough that I wondered if the call had dropped. "She's staying with our parents," Alyssa said finally. "Marin's a mess. She says you ambushed her." "Did she tell you Daniel's been telling her he missed her?" I asked. "That breaking up was a mistake?" Another silence. Then Alyssa sighed. "She said they'd been talking." "Talking," I repeated. "That's one word for it." Alyssa's voice softened. "She loves you, Lily." I closed my eyes. "Does she?" I asked quietly. Because from where I'm standing, she's been keeping one foot in the past while asking me to plan a future with her brother. Alyssa didn't argue. "She wants the ring back," she said after a moment. The words hit harder than I expected. Not because I was surprised, but because they confirmed what I already knew. "She can come get it herself," I replied. Alyssa exhaled. "Give her a few days." I didn't promise anything. Daniel showed up Wednesday evening. I was working from home when I heard the key turn in the lock. Slow, hesitant, like he wasn't sure he still belonged there. He looked worse than I expected. No styled hair, no carefully chosen outfit, just sweatpants, an old hoodie, dark circles under his eyes like sleep had been avoiding him on purpose. "I'm here for my things," he said, voice flat. I muted my computer and turned my chair toward him. "So that's it," I said. "We're done." He winced. "You humiliated me." I let the words sit between us. "You invited your ex-girlfriend to your birthday party," I said evenly. "An ex you've been emotionally involved with for months." I didn't humiliate you. I stopped pretending. He shook his head. You knew what would happen. Yes, I said, because I was the only one paying attention. Daniel dropped onto the couch, hands covering his face. I didn't lie, he muttered. You told me she wasn't seeing anyone, I said. You told me she was just a friend. Meanwhile, she thought you were available, and her boyfriend didn't even know the party existed. He dragged his hands down his face. I got confused. I stood up. Confused? I repeated. We've been together 4 years, engaged, comfortable, safe. He looked up at me, eyes glassy. And then Marin showed up and reminded you of what it felt like when things were exciting and new, I said. And instead of talking to me, instead of being honest, you invited her into our life and expected me to swallow it. I never cheated on you, he said quickly. You were going to. The words came out before I could soften them. Daniel froze. That's why you invited her, I continued, my voice steady now. You wanted to see if the spark was still there. You wanted to test it. And if Evan hadn't shown up, what then? He opened his mouth, closed it. I stepped closer. Another late-night conversation, I asked? A kiss? A goodbye that wasn't actually goodbye? He didn't answer. Because he couldn't. That's why you're angry, I said quietly. Not because I embarrassed you, because I exposed something you weren't ready to admit, even to yourself. Daniel's shoulders slumped. I didn't mean for any of this to happen, he whispered. And yet, I replied, you made every choice that led us here. Silence filled the apartment, thick, heavy, final. He stood slowly, walked to the bedroom, and began packing. By the time he left that night, the future we'd planned had already stopped existing. Daniel moved out completely the following Monday. His parents came with him. His father wouldn't look at me. His mother hugged me tightly before they left and whispered, I'm sorry. The engagement was officially over. I kept the ring. Not out of spite, out of truth. Returning it would have felt like pretending it had never meant anything. And it had, just not enough. A few weeks later, I heard through mutual friends that Daniel and Marin tried dating again. It lasted 3 weeks. Apparently, nostalgia doesn't survive reality. Marin went back to Evan. He forgave her. I don't know how, but he did. Daniel never reached out. Not once. About a month after everything fell apart, Daniel texted me. I'm sorry for how things ended. You deserve better. I read it and didn't respond. Not because I hated him, but because the chapter was closed. Last week, I ran into Alyssa at a coffee shop downtown. She told me Daniel had moved to Portland for a job opportunity. A fresh start, she said. I wished him well, and I meant it. As for me, I moved to a smaller apartment closer to work. Started going to the gym again. Let Jordan drag me out when I wanted to stay home and replay old conversations that no longer mattered. I deleted Daniel from social media, not out of anger, but out of necessity. Someone asked me recently if I regretted inviting Evan to the party, if I thought it was petty, vindictive. I thought about it, and the answer surprised them. No, I said, I don't regret it. Because Daniel made his choices long before that night. He chose to emotionally invest in someone else while wearing my ring. He chose to lie by omission. He chose nostalgia over honesty. All I did was bring the truth into the light. Would I have preferred a different ending? Of course. But you can't build a future with someone who's still rehearsing their past. The apartment felt different once Daniel was gone. Not emptier, just quieter. Like a room after a storm has passed and taken the noise with it. For the first few days, I kept expecting some emotional aftershock, a breakdown, regret, the urge to call him and rewrite the ending. That's what movies promise you, that the final separation is dramatic, that grief announces itself loudly. But real endings don't always do that. Sometimes they arrive calmly, like clarity finally sitting down beside you. I boxed up the things we'd bought together, the extra coffee mugs, the throw blanket he insisted we needed, the framed photo from our mountain trip, the one where we're smiling at the camera, engaged, convinced we were standing at the beginning instead of the edge. I didn't destroy anything. I didn't need to. Daniel had already done the breaking. His parents came the following Monday to help him move the last of his things. I stayed in the bedroom while they packed, not out of bitterness, but because there was nothing left to say. When they were done, his mother knocked softly on the door. I just wanted to say goodbye, she said, eyes shiny. And I'm sorry. I hugged her. It was brief, honest, enough. His father nodded once in my direction, more acknowledgement than warmth, and then they were gone. That was it. 4 years reduced to silence and cardboard boxes. Life didn't magically improve after that, but it did become lighter. I moved to a smaller apartment closer to work. Less space, less echo, fewer memories clinging to the walls. I rearranged my routines. Morning gym sessions, longer walks home, nights where I read instead of scrolling through photos that no longer belonged to me. Jordan stayed close. So did a few friends who hadn't known what to say at the party, but found their voices afterward. They didn't ask me to explain myself. They didn't tell me how strong I was. They just stayed. About 3 weeks later, I heard through a mutual friend that Daniel and Marin had tried dating again. It didn't last. Apparently, the version of each other they missed didn't exist anymore, if it ever had. Marin went back to Evan. He forgave her. That part bothered me more than I expected. Not because I wanted her to suffer, but because forgiveness doesn't always mean healing. Sometimes it just means fear of being alone won. Daniel never reached out, until one night, almost a month later. His text was short. "I'm sorry for how things ended. You deserved better." I stared at the screen for a long time. Then I set the phone down. Because apologies that arrive after accountability has expired aren't really apologies. They're echoes. A few days after that, I sold the ring. It wasn't an emotional decision. It was practical. The money went towards something I'd been putting off for years. A solo trip I'd always talked about, but never prioritized. Proof to myself that my life wasn't on hold just because a relationship ended. Someone asked me later if inviting Evan to the party was cruel, if I'd crossed a line. I thought about that night, the string lights, the frozen smiles, the moment everything stopped pretending. And I answered honestly, no, because I didn't create the betrayal. I didn't invent the lies. I didn't pull Daniel toward the past while he was promising me a future. All I did was refuse to protect a story that was already untrue. You can survive a breakup. You can survive heartbreak. But you cannot survive being slowly erased while being asked to stay. I learned that the hard way. And if there's one thing I don't regret, it's choosing clarity over comfort. Because you can't build a future with someone who's still living in their past.